In the previous video, we studied about the independent prepositions, which are standalone preposition. Then we looked at the makif preposition. And in this video, we will learn about the inseparable preposition. What does that mean? So these would be a prefix to a particular noun, a particular word. So let us look at three inseparable prepositions in Hebrew. However, in English we have many prepositions, but in Hebrew we have only three inseparable prepositions, such as be, that is bet with a shiva, lamed with a shiva, kaf with a shiva. That's why you see each of these prepositions has more than one meaning. Be with shiva is the default way of writing, which can mean in, by, with. Similarly, lamed with shiva is the default way of writing a lamed preposition, which can be translated as to or for. Likewise, we have key preposition, that is kaf with the dagesh and a shiva underneath, can be translated like, as, or according to. So these are the three inseparable prepositions that you need to keep in your mind. Be preposition, lay preposition, and key preposition. Now let us look at an example of an inseparable preposition in a sentence. If you look at the one that are highlighted in yellow are the inseparable preposition. It's not like the independent preposition. It is neither like the makif preposition. But here it is prefixed to a particular word, just like the definite articles that we studied. So you see a be preposition here, bet with a shiva, and how do we read this one? Bershit. So the shiva has a very short pronunciation. So Bershit bara Elohim. In beginning God created. So the yellow highlighted one is the inseparable preposition. You see how it is written? Bet with a shiva. Let's look at another example. That is Mizmor le David. So you see a lamed with a shiva, which simply means a lay preposition. So whenever you see a bet with a shiva at the beginning of a word, whenever you see a lamed with a shiva at the beginning of a word, or whenever you see a kaf with a shiva beneath it at the beginning of a word, you can be sure that it could possibly be a preposition. Alright? Because usually every word mostly would begin. A preposition will always stand at the beginning of a word. Alright? Mostly it would stand at the beginning of a word. So here what is the translation? Mizmor means a psalm. Okay, do you remember I told you in the previous lesson, Hebrew does not have indefinite articles. But depending upon the context, we need to supply the indefinite article in our English translation. So that's why Mizmor, that is psalm, has a psalm. Lamed with shiva is a preposition which can be translated to or for. So you see here, lamed with a shiva is to or for David. That is a psalm to David, or a psalm for David. A psalm to David. Now let us look at some of the key important principles that we need to remember when we are prefixing an inseparable preposition to baget kefet letters, to definite articles, and to gutturals. Similar like our definite article, whenever we prefix a preposition to a baget kefet letter, to a guttural letter, or to a word that already has definite article, how do we prefix it? What are the changes, or what are the vowel changes that we will go through are the key observations. So the first case is inseparable preposition when it appears before baget kefet letter. Let's look at it. When an inseparable preposition appears before a baget kefet letter, what happens? That letter will drop its dagesh lene. Look at an example. Bayit is the example here. Bayit becomes be, that is, you have a bet with a shiva, and the Dagesh Lene which was in Bayit is dropped. Okay, it no longer has a Dagesh Lene because because it has a preposition in front of it. Look at the other example. David is another example. To this you are adding a preposition, a lay preposition. What has happened to the Dagesh Lene in Dalit? It is dropped. So this is something that you need to keep in mind. So the Dagesh in a Dagesh Lene in a Baget Kefet letter will be dropped whenever you prefix a preposition to it. Alright. Now let's move on to the next one. This is an important principle that we need to remember. What is this principle? Whenever two Shavas come together, the first Shava will result in a Hirek. We already studied under Shava that we can have two Shavas together in the middle of a word, but we cannot have two Shavas at the beginning of a word. If so, if two Shavas come at the beginning of a word, what is the result of it? The first Shava will be reduced to a Hirek, and the second Shava will stand as it is. Let me repeat. Whenever there are two Shavas at the beginning, if there are two Shavas in the middle, absolutely fine. The first one will be a silent Shava, the second one will be a vocal Shava. However, when two Shavas come at the beginning of a word, what happens? The first one is reduced to a Hirek, that is an I-class vowel, whereas the second Shava remains as it is. Let's look at an example. You see, the first word, what we see here is Behema. Okay, Behema. So now we are prefixing a be preposition to it. What happens? There are two Shavas at the beginning now. Can we have two Shavas together at the beginning? No, it's not possible. So what is the rule? Whenever two Shavas come together, the first one is turned into a Hirek. You see here? It becomes, instead of a Shava, it becomes a Hirek. And the rest remains the same, and especially the Shava under this the second consonant remains intact as it is. But we have an exception to this principle. Let me explain to you in the next slide. There is one exception. What is that exception? If the word begins with a Yod, the Shava is dropped. What did we say? Whenever there are two Shavas together, the first Shava is turned into a Hirek, whereas the second Shava remains intact. However, whenever the word begins with Yod, and if that Yod has Shava underneath it, what happens? The Yod under Shava is dropped. Alright, the simple reason being, Yod is a quiescent letter. Let us look at an example. Yerushalayim. Okay, Yerushalayim is the example. When you add a be preposition to it, what happens? Be with a Shava, Yod with a Shava, two Shavas together. What happens? The first one becomes a Hirek. Absolutely fine. It remains the same. However, Yod, you see the highlighted Yod? The Shava under Yod gets dropped. And that is the exception that you need to remember when two Shavas are added together. Now, let's look at the second exception. What is the second exception? If the word begins with a guttural. Okay, if a word begins with a guttural, the prefix adopts the vowel mark of the letter it precedes. What does it mean? Most of the guttural letters would prefer a composite Shava. So whether it is a simple Shava or a composite Shava, that's what we need to keep in mind. If it is a simple Shava, what happens? The first Hirek is reduced to a first Shava is reduced to a Hirek. However, when it is a composite Shava, what happens? It takes the corresponding short vowel. That is, Shava under Aleph is Hatuf Pata, and the preposition also takes the corresponding short vowel. So it drops the Shava, it takes the corresponding short vowel. Let me repeat it. So if the word begins with a guttural, the prefix adopts the vowel mark of the letter it precedes. So now you see here, under Aleph you have a short vowel, that is a composite Shava. And whenever you had two Shivas together, you cannot have two Shivas at the beginning of a word. So what happens? It adopts the corresponding short vowel. So Ari plus Ki becomes Ka Ari. Right? Lion becomes as a lion. The final exception that we all need to remember is this. That is, the final exception that we need to keep in our mind is if a word is joined to a noun with a definite article, the he drops out as a contraction. Now let's look at an example and let's try to understand this one. That is, you see here ha arits. In this one, ha is a definite article, right? It is a definite article and this is a noun. To this you are prefixing a preposition. So when you do this one, what happens? Look at the final form, the way it is written. What happens? He is dropped out, but the vowel pointing comes under the preposition. So you see, you had a be preposition, the Shiva drops out, however, the vowel pointing of a definite article is retained under preposition. So how do we translate? Ba arits. So what are the three things that we have here? Number one, we have a preposition. Number two, we have a definite article. And then we have a noun. So how do we translate the whole thing? Okay. In the earth. One of the important principles that we learned in the previous definite article session is, how do we write a definite article? He with pata and a dagesh in the ordinary letters. If there is no ordinary letters, if there are guttural letters, you will see the vowel under he would go through some changes because gutturals will not be able to take the dagesh. Similar would be the observation made under the preposition case as well. Now let's look at an example where the definite article is already prefixed. That is hum melek. Here we have a word with an ordinary letter. To this, if I am going to add a be preposition, how will we write hum melek plus a preposition? When it is prefixed, you will write bet with a pata that is under he, and he gets disappeared, only pata comes in. And then how will you recognize it is a definite article? It is by the use of dagesh in the next consonant. If you see this pattern, just like what we cite in the definite article, you will be able to recognize this is a definite article with a preposition. So what are the three things that we are able to find here? This is a preposition, this is a preposition, this is a definite article, and this is a noun. So what will be the translation? The translation will be with the king.